Wood vaulting explained, the climate solution you've never heard of. Forests throughout the West are overgrown and full of flammable vegetation, fueling wildfires and carbon emissions. Could burying it help solve the problem? Kylie Moore Grist reports, the story originally by Grist. In northwest Montana's Swan Valley, a pile of about 100 small logs, 10 feet long or so, sits nearly neatly stacked, ringed by berry bushes, a few white wildflowers, towering large trees. Surrounding the logs are several acres of U.S. Forest Service land, which was thinned of dead, downed, and dense understory trees last year to reduce wildfire risk. The log pile that remains is too small to be processed into lumber. Plus, the sawmill just down the highway recently closed, so the wood may get sent to a pulp mill if the price is right, or it may sit in the forest for years. Smaller limbs may be burned in a prescribed fire, but Nin Zheng, climate scientist at the University of Maryland, is sizing up the pile too. He sees another solution: burying the logs and all the planet heating gases they'd otherwise release underground. That's the idea of a carbon sequestration technique called wood vaulting. Forests throughout much of the western U.S. are overgrown, full of tangled trees and brush that's primed to burn. The Forest Service wildfire crisis strategy calls for removing excess vegetation on top to 50 million more acres of federal, state, tribal, and private lands by 2032. Scientists and climate tech companies say wood vaulting would help store some of the carbon dioxide equivalent in the form of flammable vegetation that the Forest Service must deal with in the coming years, an estimated 2.2 billion metric tons. That's roughly as much as CO2 as cement production worldwide emitted in 2016, and as much as forests globally removed from the atmosphere last year. There's more wood in the forest than markets for it to go to, said research forester Nate Anderson, who studies product supply chains for the Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station in Missoula. Valuing the carbon stored in wood vaults could change that. If done properly, burying the debris could help limit the release of greenhouse gases that warm the atmosphere and contribute to climate change. I don't see any reason why it can't be actually quite significant and reach millions of tons of carbon dioxide sequestration per year in the U.S. alone, said Sinead Crotty, the director of the nonprofit Carbon Containment Lab. Daniel Sanchez, professor who studies CO2 removal at the University of California, Berkeley, agrees. Wood vaulting is a newly emerging approach that we think is relatively low cost and relatively scalable, he said. Investors, including Bill Gates, have poured millions of dollars into jump-starting wood vaults in recent years. A handful of small-scale sites are in progress across the country, including Maryland, Nevada, Texas, Colorado. The Department of Energy recently awarded $50,000 for two companies, including Zen's Carbon Lockdown Project, to construct a wood vault in Montana, one of the many carbon dioxide removal or CDR pilot programs to receive funding. According to the 2023 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Synthesis Report, CDR technology, which can include direct air capture technology, land-based carbon sinks, and more, is an unavoidable compound of limiting warming to 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius, which experts say is necessary if we are to avoid irreversible effects of climate change. Now, I don't understand how this is possible. I thought that they wanted greenery in forests, in order for the forests, of course, to capture the carbon dioxide and create more oxygen. If they cut down the trees, how will they achieve that? Now, wood vaulting is conceptually simple. Dig a hole with an excavator, bury small trees, wood debris, and other plant materials that are not large or valuable enough to sell. The vaults resemble a layer of cake of trees, gaps filled with dirt, and more trees stacked on top, finishing off with a frosting of topsoil. Once companies acquire biomass, not just any hole will do. The intrusion of water, oxygen, and even termites could compromise the vault's durability by encouraging decomposition. Digging vaults in clay or silty soil away from groundwater is thought to be the best practice. Some alternative methods actually submerge the wood in water entirely, but that's less common. Conditions inside the vault must remain stable, ideally in perpetuity, without human intervention, for projects to uphold their promises. The same kinds of sensors already used in landfills can be installed to monitor data like oxygen, moisture, and methane levels over time. Digging holes 15 to 25 plus feet can mean disturbing soil, destroying habitat, removing nutrients from the landscape, all potential downsides of wood vaulting. So companies are considering using already degraded locations like old industrial sites or mines. The ideal location for wood vaulting is near the source of its biomass, which cuts back on transportation, emission, and logistics. Enough labor to transfer biomass and construct vaults, plus some sort of protection that they won't just get dug up in a few decades, are other key factors. Another concern with wood vaulting is that it may incentivize more logging than necessary, but so far the industry is focused on burying the leftovers of wildfire risk reduction treatments, as well as trees that have already burned or were hazard trees removed from urban environments. Guidelines from Strip Inc.'s Frontier Fund, one of the leading funds that purchase carbon dioxide removal credits from startups, recommends the leftovers of wildfire risk reduction projects as a sustainable source. The science to know how long these vaults could keep CO2 out of the atmosphere is still in the works. We want to be as clear-minded as possible when promising anything around durability, Crotty said, and if done properly, Sanchez thinks vaults might be able to store CO2 for hundreds of thousands of years. Companies share numbers that range from 100 plus to 1,000 plus years. While it's hard to say exactly how long wood vaulting may be able to store carbon, previous discoveries hold clues. A bulldozer on Carbon Lockdown Project Canada site found a red cedar log buried in the soil. Zen still has it in his office today. He says further analysis yet to publish confirmed it was 3,000 years old, but had only lost 5% of its carbon. Another way to analyze wood vaulting's potential is by comparing how much carbon it can store to other more established techniques. Wood vaulting's carbon yield is high compared to that of biochar, a charcoal-esque soil amendment that comes from partially combusted organic material. Biochar can retain about 30% of its biomass original carbon, while wood vaulting is thought to store over 90%, according to Sanchez. Wood vaulting is also fairly cheap compared to other methods. Calculations from one of Zeng's test sites found it cost $105 per metric ton of CO2, mostly in transportation costs. For comparison, the average cost of biochar in California is $400 per metric ton of CO2, and direct carbon capture technologies can cost anywhere between $600 to $1,000 per metric ton of CO2. That's the transformative aspect of this idea compared to many other biomass utilization strategies, Zeng said. It's going to come down to economics. Several companies currently trying out wood vaulting, mostly on private land. Sen created the Carbon Lockdown Project, which began with their research site outside Montreal, Canada, in 2013. He's now working on a property in Maryland for trees removal from urban settings that would have otherwise been mulched. And this is the article that appeared first on Grist. It's on Gizmodo. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.